That's bad.
Alright guys, welcome back to Project Dime a Dozen. This is where we try to go fast for cheap. Now if you've missed any of the last videos, let me give you a quick refresher. Back in 1994, Hot Rod Magazine did a project car called the Cheap Thrills Dart, and the whole premise behind it was trying to go fast for cheap. Their goal was 12s for $2,000, and they ended up going 1260s for a little less than 1,900 bucks. So fast forward 28 years and we're trying to replicate that. We're trying to go the same ET 1260s for the same modern monetary value, which would be about 3,800 bucks. If you wanted all the things to be the same, we would go 12s for $4,000, but I think it'd be cool to run the same number for about the same amount of money. So in the last video, we got the 6.0 stabbed down in the engine bay, and we put the $140 eBay cam and springs kit in it, and everything's looking just perfect. The truck oil pan just barely clears everything. So I think we're good there. Today what I'm going to try to do is get the transmission bolted up and get the drive shaft in and maybe put the shifter in, possibly. So when I bought this truck, it was already set up for a small block Chevy and a turbo 350. That's what the trans cross member and the drive shaft are for, is the turbo 350. Now, a long tail Powerglide is the same length as that, and I happen to have a long tail Powerglide that I got a really good deal on. This is the same one that came out of the James Brown RX-7 that I had for 4 or 5 years. Now, I think that this might be the biggest point of contention in this whole build series, is this transmission. So this transmission was initially, like 4 years ago, just given to me to get out of the guy's way. And I held on to it, and then when I started putting the RX-7 together, I guess more seriously putting it together, and then later on I ended up horse trading a bunch of stuff and selling some stuff, and had Tony at Mid-Michigan Transmission go through it for me, and he put clutches and a valve body in it. So I've got about $300 into this transmission itself. Now right now this has a badass TSI torque converter in it that would completely destroy our budget. That's like a $1,300 converter, I think, $1,300 bucks, that I also got on trade. I traded a set of 317 cylinder heads for that. But in the spirit of the build, we're not going to use this converter. I've got the old Jegs converter out of Jack Black that we pulled out when we put the Circle D converter in it. So the thing that's funny about Powerglides is when people don't like them, they don't care about them at all. So like this one was given to me for free, and then that one over there, it didn't look like this when I bought it. It was covered in like a ½ inch of just grease and mud and stuff. But that one I got at a yard sale for 20 bucks. And then that is a Turbo 400 that I bought for 200, either 150 or 200 bucks. And I ended up trading that for that Powerglide there with the trans brake in it. So it's like, there's plenty of good deals for transmission. So I don't think saying that this was $300 is actually that big of a deal. I mean, it's not like this has a trans brake or anything like that. It just has good clutches and a manual valve body in it. So it's not anything crazy. And then for all the people who are saying that I paid way too much for the motor, yeah, that could have been had for a lot cheaper than 1,200 bucks. Maybe these two will kind of balance each other out. Because like realistically, I just thought a 6.0 would be perfect for this project, but I think a 4.8 or a 5.3, you can get those for like 200 bucks, would have been just as good realistically. But a 6.0 just has that cool factor, you know? It's like telling people you have a 383. So yeah, this is the transmission that we're going to put in it. Hopefully the drive shaft and trans mount pretty much bolt right up to this thing. And then the torque converter is in this Circle D box. Don't worry, it's not actually a Circle D. This is the Jegs converter from Jack, and we put the Circle D converter in Jack, which is why it's in this box here. So I think it's pretty realistic. Jack's old 4000 stall. So I think it's pretty realistic to find one of these converters on Marketplace or something for like 100 bucks. I know that sometimes I'll see like BTE converters on there for 120, 150 bucks. So I think this Jegs one, even though these have really gone up in price, when these were new, when I was buying them, these XHD ones, they were like 350 bucks. Now they're 550 bucks. It's crazy. So yeah, I'm going to get that stabbed in the transmission, then we'll get the truck lifted up, and hopefully, actually before I do that, I'm going to double check that the converter will mate up to this flex plate. Usually the 6.0 flat flex plate with the spacer behind it will bolt up perfect to like a Turbo 400 style converter. But this one I noticed has a dish to it, which that might kind of bite me in the butt. And might have to order like those $9-10 little snout spacers for the converter. So we'll see. We'll get the truck lifted up and test fit the converter, and if that goes well, we'll start throwing everything together. All right, got the truck all up in the air. This is my first time actually looking underneath of it. Wow, floors look good. So we are going to be using the stock tank, hopefully. It's really not too bad. A lot of scaling, but I don't see any rot or anything like that. Well, I guess this, but who cares about that? Yeah, so at some point I am going to pull these overload leaves off, because those, when the spring compresses and everything like that, that'll like immediately, instantly change the spring rate. So we're going to pull those off and run just this main pack. And we'll probably get some, maybe, I don't know. If there's enough left in the budget, I'd like to get some 2-inch drop blocks for this thing. Yeah, everything else is looking pretty good. Here's our, oh wild. Here's our cross member. The drive shaft is in the back of the truck that I wish I'd remembered to grab. That looks like it could be fun. I don't know if I can beat the floor in enough to get a bolt in there, because like I could probably get the transmission in place here, but I don't think I could get a bolt in there with the way it is. I could probably get these 3 in. 4 is a nice, good number for transmission bolts. If we could get 4, I'd be thrilled. So yeah, I might try to smack that up a bit. So yeah, let me grab that Jegs converter and see how it mates up to this. Yep. Shoot. Yep, that snout does not fit in it. So yeah, I am going to have to come up with a spacer if I want to do this the right way. Luckily, they're cheap. They're like $9-10 on Amazon or eBay. But I was really hoping to get the transmission and everything in here today. But looks like that's not going to happen. I could still like bolt the transmission up and test fit everything, but I don't really see the point in doing that, because I want this to just be one and done, you know? So I'm gonna first look around, see if I can find one local used, and if nobody has one, then I'll probably just order one on Amazon. Try and get it here tomorrow or the next day. I might be able to get it here tomorrow, actually. But while that's happening, we can take a quick rudimentary measurement for this. See, our mount is about 20.5, give or take. And, oops, come on, stay hard. We are, yeah, about 20.5, so that should work perfectly. And then I still have the motor mounts up there loose so that we can wiggle things around as we need. So if that works, hopefully that means the drive shaft will work. Let me measure center bolt to the end. That's about 7, give or take. I'll measure from the center of the U-joint to the center hole on the cross member. That is, come on. That is about 64. Alright, so I was really banking on this drive shaft working, because to have one of these made, which usually when you're doing a bunch of swapping stuff to a car, you'll usually have to have a drive shaft made. So to have one made here is about $400, $450. So really hoping this thing works. Well, it's about there. It's 53.25. That should be really, really close once this thing's down on its weight, because we measured it at full droop. So the distance between the tail shaft on the transmission and the rear end is longer. You see? So this might actually work. Yes! So I really am kicking myself right now for not looking at the snout on the crankshaft when I had it on the stand here. I could have had that thing ordered already and had it been here. Stupid me. I was like, no, it's a 6.0. Of course it's going to have a flex plate. Actually, you know what? I think ordering that's going to take too long. So I'm just going to steal the flex plate and spacer off of this motor. This is the one out of James Brown. Now this new, I paid either 60 or 65 bucks for it. So I think a fair, like, used price would be $40. So then I got to work pulling the old dished flex plate off our 6.0 that was in the S10 so that we could make room for our new and improved flat flex plate with the spacer that came off the 5.3 that was sitting on the engine stand. And yes, this is going to cost a little bit more than one of those cheapo spacer rings that we could use with the dished flex plate, but I wasn't willing to hold my breath waiting for shipping to get it here in time. So I got the flat flex plate bolted on, all torqued to spec with the impact, and made sure this thing wasn't going anywhere. And then I was feeling a little claustrophobic in the trans tunnel, so I figured I'd massage it a little bit, give us a little bit more room to get things in and out of there, hopefully fit 4 bell housing bolts in there. And once I was happy with that, I figured let's move on to pulling the trans cross member out of the way so I stopped hitting my head on it and yelling obscenities into the void of nothingness. Knock on wood, most of the bolts came out pretty easy, and the crossmember itself actually isn't as heavy as it looks. It looks like it'd be 30 pounds, 40 pounds, but it's probably only like 15 or so. And I figured while I was getting rid of stuff that I was getting caught up in, let me cut these emergency brake cables out of the way so I stopped getting tangled up in these things just hanging around like a spider web. Once all the important work was done, I could swap the converters out real quick, and it was really hard for me to pull that nice, good TSI converter out of the Powerglide and put this cheapo Jegs one back in. But this should be plenty enough for what we're doing. This converter, I think, is rated for like 800 horsepower, which we're not going to make anywhere near that. Putting the trans up in the truck was a little bit of a fight, but it wasn't too bad. I definitely had to massage things more off camera, and I had to cut this little doohickey out of the way to actually get it up into place. Once it was in place, there was plenty of room for it, but I couldn't get it past things. Alright, all things considered, it wasn't too bad to fit in there. Like someone said in the last video about the firewall, I had to re-engineer the trans tunnel a little bit, but it wasn't really too bad. I think the transmission would fit 10 times better in the tunnel if I cut the K-member and moved the engine forward like an inch, inch and a half, but I refuse to do that. So now I'm going to lift it back up a little bit and get the cross member back in there to mount this. And ooh, lucky. I thought this was one of the ones that only had the 2 on the side. It does have the one in the middle, so sweet. I thought we were gonna have to slot that and make it all weird, but it should work perfect. Also, you like the plugs that I put in the transmission? This was in the RX-7 for a year and a half with that rubber plug. It works great. Now we can test fit the drive shaft. All right. Come on. There we go. This cap over here is screwed up. And I don't know where. I'm hoping the straps are in the bed of the truck. all the needle bearings got all screwed up in here, all unhappy. Oh Jesus, come on. There we go. Wait, where's the rest? There's like 14 in here. Alright, so I'm definitely gonna have to get a new U-joint. Luckily those are pretty cheap, but for testing, come on out of there. Now, we can put the jack under the rear end and jack it up to try to come close to simulating ride height so we know the stick out and everything on the drive shaft. This isn't the most precise because this will, for whatever reason, it'll start to lift the back of the truck instead of just taking the rear end to full ride height, but it'll get us pretty close. All right. Right about there, it's wanting to lift off the arm of the hoist. So, while we've got that, yeah, that's a lot of stick out. It probably comes to about there. and it sticks out of here. I know a lot of people who would run that, and I don't want to run it, but I think in this situation, we're probably gonna run it. What's our pinion angle like? It's looks like it's nose down a degree or two. So I still need to bolt up the converter and tighten these two bolts. I've got those for the cross member bolted in. Need to get a new U-joint, so we're kind of stuck there. This front one seems fine. And then I need to install the shifter. But that is gonna be in the next video. I've got an idea to make a pedestal mount for a shifter that I have on the shelf over there, and it should be pretty rad. So hopefully you guys stick around. Hopefully you guys are enjoying the build series here. And I don't know everything off the top of my head right now, so I'll put up like a sheet or something of the costs and expenses and everything, and how much is left in the budget. But that is going to do it for today's video, so hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Thank you for watching the Dime a Dozen build series. Hopefully you stick around for the upcoming videos, and thank you for subscribing, clicking that bell. We'll see you next time.